Welcome, everybody, to Lunch Bunch with Dr. Judy. My name is Judy Pearson. I am a licensed psychologist here in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. I also work part-time for Delaware Hospice, and this program is being offered to you today by Delaware Hospice. And these monthly programs are part of their ongoing commitment to sort of community service and education, and they happen the first Friday of every month from 12:30 to 1:30. I'll tell you a little bit about the next three topics. I haven't decided what order in which I'm going to give them, but I'm going to talk about something called rediscovering wonder by cultivating those moments of awe. And by awe, I mean that incredible feeling you have when you hear an amazing piece of music, or you look up at the stars and suddenly realize, how big the universe is. So I attended a very interesting workshop at a conference on this topic of how experiencing awe can improve your mental and physical health. I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to also review a very novel approach to chronic pain, which I was really blown away by. The people that are doing it are having amazing results. There is a documentary called This May Hurt a Little. You can look it up. You can buy it. I think you can watch it for about $20. It's not on Netflix or anything like that yet, but it shows this program. They follow a group of people who have very severe chronic pain, and they go through a program. And I think it's only about a 4 or 6 week group, and it has a lot to do with identifying trauma that might be related to the pain, and also learning to express and release the emotions related to that pain. And that's right up my alley. And it is amazing the dramatic results they are having. I'm thinking about doing such a group. So if you're dealing with chronic pain, keep your eye out, or email me at Judith Pearson at juno.com. If you would like to receive more information about that. The last topic I'm going to do is it comes from a New York Times article. Adam Grant wrote this piece called "There's a Name for That Blah You're Feeling." It's called languishing. And he talks about how on a continuum where depression is the end, where you're really immobilized, and thriving is when you're really fully living your life, there's a place in between that's called languishing. And he thinks a lot of people coming out of the pandemic are kind of languishing. We're not fully thriving, but we're not as depressed maybe as we were when it started. And so he talks about creating moments of flow, which is the experience you have when you're fully engaged with something and the whole world kind of disappears. And it's really going to be looking at how we can get unstuck from kind of being in this kind of blah place to more fully living our lives. So I think that'll be a good topic as well. So those are the three topics: awe, chronic pain, and languishing. And I will get information about it out to you as soon as I know. It'll be the first Friday of the next 3 months. I just don't know which I'm going to do when. Now, if you're not on the mailing list or you want a copy of the handout from today's presentation, you can write to my boss, and her name is Sandra Satterfield, and her email address, and maybe, I don't know if Terrence can put this up in the chat box. If not, I'll try to do it. Is S, as in Sandra, Satterfield is SATTERFIELD. So S Satterfield at Delaware Hospice, all one word, all small letters, all of this, .org. Or you can write to me, Judy Pearson, at Judith Pearson, Judith, JUDITH at juno.com. And I'll see if I can stick those in the chat box, but I have to admit, I'm not.
I have them up on the screen right now.
Thank you, Terrence. Really appreciate that. All right, so let's start with today's topic. Ever since I've said I was going to talk more about decluttering, and I have talked about it in the past, can't tell you how many people have said to me, "Oh my God, I really need that topic." And I want to admit to you that this is one of those instances where I really do teach what I need to learn. I am a collector and I like my things. I'll never become a minimalist, but I am kind of acutely aware of how having too much stuff around you really gets heavy, and it gets you in the way. It gets in the way of really enjoying your things. This is a quote from Lisa Schultz. She said, "My clearing has allowed me to rediscover things I have stopped seeing and put them in a place of prominence." So I don't think it's about giving up the things that feel important to you, but it's about having them, not so buried under too many things that you can't even really enjoy them. And again, if you are struggling with clutter, you are not alone. 54% of Americans in one poll said they felt totally overwhelmed by their clutter, and 78% said they had no idea what to do about it. It's not a coincidence that the storage industry today is worth about $40 billion and maybe worth more than Hollywood. It is a very growing industry, and it's obviously because we have too much clutter. The National Association of Professional Organizers report that on average, we spend 1 year of our lives looking for lost items. You're giving up a year of our life to find those things that we can't find because our homes are too cluttered. That's over 8,700 hours looking for misplaced items. Also, about a quarter of Americans pay late fees on their bills because they have misplaced their statements because it's under too many other pieces of paper. Believe me, paper is one of the biggest problems with clutter. Again, according to the National Association of Professional Organizers, 80% of what we keep, we never use. Think about that. 80% of the stuff we put down somewhere and we think someday I'm going to use that. 80% of the time we never pick that thing up again and use it. So keep that in mind. Finally, 80% of the papers we even file, we never refer to again. So even if you take the time to file a lot of papers, 80% of the time, you'll probably never lay your hands again on that piece of paper. I used to keep a lot of articles and things that I thought would make for good topics or would use in my practice. What I discovered was, I forgot that I even had them. And 9 times out of 10, when I got ready to do a presentation, I would go online and get the most recent findings and suggestions anyway. So again, think about that when you find yourself building up stacks and stacks of paper. According to the National Soap and Detergent Association, and there is such a place, a group, 80% of the clutter in, I just lost it, 40, we would eliminate 40% of our homework, housework, if we reduced our clutter. So if we just got our clutter down to a more manageable amount, 40% of our housework would be eliminated, and I'm for that. I suspect you are as well. Again, National Association of Professional Organizers, 80% of what we keep, we never use. 80% of the papers we file, we never look at again. Good news is that 80% of the clutter in our homes is due to disorganization and not lack of space. I'm not so sure that's always true, but according to them, a lot of times it's just a matter of organizing things better to reduce the amount of clutter. In terms of clothing, we wear 20% of our clothes 80% of the time. So you got closets and drawers full of clothes. 80% of the time, you're only going to use a fifth of those items. And you probably know that's true. You wear the same things over and over because they're the most comfortable. So we only wear about 20% of our clothes 80% of the time. Why do people find it hard to just throw things away, or why do people keep items? There's another survey from Refined Rooms. 63% of us think I'm going to need it someday. I might need it someday. And again, that's when it's important to remember 80% of the times you will not use that item. 63% of us are afraid we're going to give it away and then need it. 51% of us hold on to things because they have sentimental value. And I think that's true for a lot of people, obviously more than half. And there is an article, a book on your reading list on how to cope with giving away things that have sentimental value. I think that is a big piece of it. 26% of us think we're going to sell the item sometime. And I don't know what percentage of actually people do that. I suspect we bury it under so many other things we never sell it. 22% of the time people feel guilty about giving something away or throwing something away. And I think sometimes, again, that's related to sentimental value. Maybe somebody gave it to you. I talked recently to somebody who had a kind of vase that they it wasn't even practical. It had a round bottom. You couldn't even stand it up on things, but it had been in their family. So they felt terrible about the idea of letting it go. So they felt guilty and felt they couldn't let it go. But here's some inspiration for decluttering. In a recent study by IKEA, 31% of those surveys said they found more satisfaction from clearing out their closets than they did after sex. So cleaning your closets could be very satisfying, is what I'm trying to say. Just a little inspiration for why we should do this. Could be very satisfying. So how does this happen? How do we end up with so many things in our home? And believe me, I know only too well. We're afraid that throwing something out is wasteful. We are sure that there is some way in which we are going to eventually use that item. In fact, that's one of the reasons people who are very creative can often become people with too much stuff, is because they're creative and they think, I could do something with that someday, and so they put it aside. They don't want to throw it away. Those of us who are perfectionists, we're fearful of making the wrong decision about whether to keep something or let it go. So that perfectionism gets in the way of being able to make a decision. Again, the one that's cited by many is we develop sentimental attachments to our items. They may have belonged to somebody who's no longer alive, people that we've loved in the past. And sometimes we feel as if we're throwing them away when we throw the item away. These items might remind us of a time in our life when things were easier and we long for that feeling of ease. I know, for example, for years I would carry around copper tone bottles and sniff them because it would take me back to my childhood memories of going to the beach with my aunts. And 1 week of every summer, I'd get to go to the beach with my two Aunt Helen, my Aunt Agnes, and my grandmother, and it was the best time of my life. And so you'd often carry around a copper tone bottle just to sniff that smell and be transported back to that time. So sometimes I think sentimental objects are, remind us of a time in our life that we want to recapture. There are other ways to get that, but we're hung up on this idea that it's attached to these things. They give us a sense of identity, so we fear that if we throw them away, we're throwing away parts of ourselves. For example, I really want to do creative things. My parents were both artists. I do creative things in some realm, but I really like to make things. I've taken workshops and stuff like that. It really appeals to me. And so, I go to Michael's and buy a million things and store them for the day when I'm finally retired and I can make all these things. And I'm afraid that if I throw them away, I will lose that part of me that still wants to be creative. I think, I don't want to lose that part of me, and I can still get things from Michael's, but I think I could get less things. And that's really some of the solution to the problem, is not to deprive yourself so much that you then want it even more, but to find kind of a happy medium. Sometimes our things make us feel secure. People feel safe in their little nest of things in their house. For many people, and these are people who, may go on to become more severe kind of hoarders, are the thought of throwing something out creates a lot of anxiety. It creates a lot of strong feelings. For example, parting with something that was connected to a person you loved who's passed away might, renew your feelings of grief about the death of that person. Not saying that's consciously why people are not throwing something away, but probably on a more unconscious level, it could be. Also, once we have accumulated a lot of things, it's very difficult to maintain the kind of concentration and effort needed to sort through and part with those things. It just becomes so overwhelming. A lot of the strategies we're going to talk about today are really about how to chunk it down, because the biggest obstacle, A, is just getting started, and B, then not getting overwhelmed, because it's really easy to get overwhelmed and then you just feel like there's no point in going any further. So we're going to talk about how to chunk it down so that doesn't happen to you. And we start with very good intentions, but we get really overwhelmed very quickly and we become immobilized. And then we're like, I think I'm going to go to the store, go to Michael's and buy some more things. So challenging the part of making it less overwhelming is going to be key. Many of you heard my talk, I think it was just last month, on breaking down, creating change by doing things in small pieces, starting in ways that feel manageable and continuing and make it a habit and systematically kind of working towards your goal, but doing it in ways that feel manageable, a little bit at a time. There are a lot of emotional barriers to getting rid of clutter. We're going to talk techniques, but as a psychologist, I'm really aware of the fact that this is also a very emotional challenge. It's not just about techniques. It's also about overcoming some of the barriers, or at least recognizing some of the emotions that are getting in our way of dealing with the clutter. And any one of these you could explore in depth. You're going to see, if you have the handout, the last 2 pages of the handout are questions that you can ask yourself that would help you identify what might be some of the emotional barriers that are getting in your way of letting go of things. And next month we actually hope to maybe do our presentation through Zoom, which would give us more opportunity for people to interact with me, and I could hear your questions and see you. And so stay tuned, but I think we're going to do it through Zoom next month, and I think that'll give us more opportunity to have you do things like I usually do when I'm in person with people. Stop and ask, look at a few questions, reflect for a little while, and then come back and share some of your thoughts and hear the thoughts of other people and realize you really are not alone. So you'll see at the end of your handout, there are questions that will help you to start to look at some of the emotions that get in the way. We are not little computers. If we were, life would probably be very tidy, but we'd be very boring. But 9 times out of 10, when people are stuck around something, it isn't just that they don't know the techniques. They may not know how to get started. They may not know how to keep it less overwhelming, but it's also because there's a lot of emotion that gets stirred up when you have to let go of things, go through things. So I think it's important to at least acknowledge that and find ways to deal with it so that it doesn't get in your way. For many, the problem is primarily organizational. You just get too overwhelmed and you just don't know where to start and you don't know how to keep yourself going. But there are also emotional barriers, as I was saying, that need to be acknowledged and addressed. If, for example, a heavy emphasis was put on being frugal in the family that you grew up with, the idea is you should never throw anything away. you know, a responsible, frugal person is, holds on to things so that they don't have to keep buying new versions of it. So if you grew up with that idea, you probably really internalize this strong belief system that somehow you're a bad person if you're not frugal. So one thing I say to people is saving something you might use someday in some way really more important than living a life with less chaos in it. And I think sometimes you begin to realize that maybe there are more important values than just being frugal, more important values like having a life that feels joyful and happy and manageable. So again, but if you grew up with that frugal message growing up, that may be deeply embedded in you, and you may really need to ask yourself, what's the greater value? A life of simplicity and that's manageable, or always being frugal? So again, sometimes it runs up against values we really internalized. So ask yourself, what is the higher value? Is it frugality, being frugal, or is it freedom and a sense of calm? And again, think about that if you really find that you're going up against a value that says you should be frugal. There might be a greater, more overarching value that says you need to be free and peaceful. What price do you and your family pay for not throwing things out? That's another way to kind of get at that. If you really are worried about being wasteful, donate things. Often I'll say to myself, this is something that I've really enjoyed, but I'm not using it much anymore. Maybe it's meant to go on to somebody else for their enjoyment. At a deeper level, though, I think a family that is very frugal is also a family where there is what I would call a deprivation mentality. Deprivation mentality, sort of this unspoken belief that there's really not enough to go around. And again, it isn't really even just tangible things that there's not enough to go around in this family. In this kind of frugal family, there's also not enough love or attention or praise going around. If you grew up in a family where only certain siblings got mom and dad's attention, and the sense was there wasn't really enough love for all the kids, so one kid was kind of the golden child and you were always the kid compared to the golden child and you were never good enough. So if you grew up in a family where there was deprivation, there wasn't enough love, there wasn't enough attention, there wasn't enough guidance. And sometimes it's because your parent might be mentally ill or an alcoholic, and so they don't have enough love to give you because they don't have it for themselves either. But there's a deprivation. There's not enough. But the not enough is not really about tangible objects. The not enough is about love, attention, guidance, and the things you need growing up as a child. So under those circumstances, things kind of become a substitute for this very deep hunger we have for the love we didn't get growing up or the attention we didn't get growing up, but we try to fill it with material things. So there's this sense of emptiness, or I'm hungry for something. What you're really hungry for is love, attention, affection, nurturing, those kind of things. But you start trying to fill that void with material things. There's an expression, you can't have enough of what you don't really need. What they mean by that expression is you can't get enough food, things, if what you're really hungry for is love. No amount of food, no amount of things will ever fill that void. So you can never get enough of what you don't really need. Because what you really need is love, affection, nurturing, that kind of stuff. So there's no amount of food, things, any of that will fill that void. But we keep trying because we go back to ways of maybe coping that we did as a kid. So you really need to ask yourself under those circumstances, what am I really hungry for? What did I not get enough of in my childhood and still want more, and didn't get enough and still am not getting enough of in my adult life? And for most of it's love and attention and being nurtured and cared about, not feeling so alone in the world and frightened by having to face everything by ourselves. So if what you're really longing for is that kind of affection, attention, nurturing, you're better off joining a support group or joining a club or volunteering or finding ways to get yourself connected to people, because all the things in the world will never fill that void. Also, a lot of people who really become hoarders and develop a significant amount of problem with clutter, a lot of times the expression we use is people leave you, things don't. So if you had an experience of abandonment growing up, and it might not even be that somebody walked out, it could just be that somebody was not emotionally there for you. If you had that abandonment as a child, rather than putting yourself in situations where you might get left again by being connected to people, you attach to things, because you know what? Things don't leave you, people do. Obviously not a very good solution because it doesn't really give you what you really, really need for, but you can see how that could play a role in finding it hard to let go of things. If you're hampered by perfectionism about letting go of things, like I might make the wrong decision, I might throw this away and then 2 weeks later, regret that I did. What I'm going to say to you is give yourself permission to be imperfect. Give yourself permission to maybe, all right, I'm going to give this away. Maybe someday I'll need it again. You'll hear me say this. Ask yourself, if I really had to buy it again, how much would it cost me? If I really, could I borrow it from somebody? If you give away a book that you suddenly realize, oh God, I wish I hadn't given that away. I really want to read that book. See if you can get it at the library. See if you have a friend you can borrow it from, or get it on a used books, website. So, if you're worried about making the wrong decision, give yourself permission to be imperfect. Look, the reality is we're all imperfect. To be human is to be imperfect. That's healthy shame. It's the realization that by definition, if we are human, we are imperfect. And, we don't need to be perfect. We can't be. And, we aren't. We all do the best we can out here, but we have our Achilles heels and places where we stumble because we're human. You're allowed to be human. You're allowed to be human. You have to be human, and you have to accept that you're human. If there are things you really want to change, fine, but do it from a place of self-love, not self-hatred, which never serves things. If you have a hard time letting go of things because of the sentimental value they have, you might need to stir up that loss again, and giving something away or passing it on to another person or just throwing it away because it's not something you really could pass on. You might get back in touch with some feelings of sadness related to the person that gave you that or the person that's associated with that. But what I want to tell you is that even if it triggers feelings of loss, you can stand those emotions. And I'm not trying to minimize them. I'm just trying to say you would survive that. And you might grieve, you might cry, you might need to write a letter to the person who died, just saying the things you want to say to them, but just sitting with those feelings and letting them out will not do you in. Holding on to things and cluttering your home with things because they remind you of somebody does long-term harm, as opposed to just sitting with the sadness. You can also take pictures of things that are associated with people. Create a photo album of those pictures. You don't need to necessarily hold on to the original thing. Again, it may trigger feelings of loss, and sometimes we're so desperate not to feel feelings, it's not always conscious, that we pay a higher price by not just sitting with the feelings and being able to tolerate them. If it does stir up big feelings, write about it, talk to a friend about it, even talk to your loved one who's in spirit. And I said, take pictures of things. Maybe somebody, your great aunt who you loved gave you a whole set of teacups. Well, keep one or two. Photograph the rest. Maybe put them in a very nice setting. Take a photo of them. Frame the photo. But find ways to not have to keep every item. If you're afraid that you're going to lose a part of your identity if you throw something out, well, find other ways to maintain that identity. If it's part of your past, a simpler time, take a picture. Write about those memories. Write about that experience of life when it was simpler and easier, and tap back into those feelings. And then you may find that getting rid of things returns you to a life of greater ease because you're not dealing with so much stuff. If you're, afraid of throwing something away because you want to really get more in touch with the part of you that's creative, well, do something to jumpstart that desire. You're going to find it far more fulfilling to just to take an art class. Michael's does all kinds of craft classes. There's all kinds of craft classes online if you want to learn how to do something. But do something to jumpstart your creativity as opposed to just accumulating things in a box that represent that part of yourself. Be more creative. Find ways to be more creative. It's going to be far more fulfilling than just having box of craft projects that you never do. If your things make you feel secure, ask yourself what else could make you feel secure. Do you need more people in your life? Perhaps you should volunteer somewhere or join a club or join a discussion group and get connected to people. So maybe that's what would make you feel more secure in life. If throwing things away stirs up feelings of anxiety or other kinds of uncomfortable feelings, like I say, sit down and listen to those feelings. What is still hurting inside of you? What is still in need of attention inside of you? It's far more important to ask yourself that and begin to face that than to continue to distract yourself by just filling your house with things. If the inner critic kicks in, says, "Oh, don't throw that away," or "I can't believe it took so long to do this," try talking to yourself in the way you would talk to a friend, or imagine someone who's very loving, encouraging you as opposed to criticizing you. If you feel just paralyzed, do something for 5 minutes. If you really get an emotional boost from buying things, which is common for many of us, and it is part of how this problem starts, explore other ways to feel good about yourself. Or use techniques like I have somebody who she goes to Home Goods and she puts everything she really wants in her cart, and then she walks around the store for a while and then really decides whether she can put some of them back, and often she can. But the thought that somebody else might get it, makes her want it even more. So if she's got it in her cart, then she can really think about how much she really wants it. And just slowing herself down often makes her more capable of deciding what she really needs or wants. So broaden your techniques for sort of self-soothing and satisfaction. Or tell yourself, I can buy one new thing for every 5 old things that I get rid of. Those are just quick little suggestions, but we're going to talk more about other techniques. You may also resent that you have to do this. Maybe you have a partner that's not helping and you're pissed off about that. Well, if you're really mad about something, or mad that you even have to do this, well, then write about your anger or go throw ice cubes at a wall. Get that feeling out in some safe way, even if it's irrational. Find a safe way to release it and then see if you can get started on doing something. If you find that after you've learned some techniques for organizing and decluttering, you still can't get started, well, then I want you to stop and journal write or do something that invites you to listen to your heart and really figure out what may be some of the deeper roots of this issue. You can do this even as you start to declutter. In fact, starting to declutter may help you get access to what those feelings are, fear, sadness, or whatever, and take time to deal with those feelings because you can't always just dismiss them and move on. Sometimes you just need to stop and pay attention to them and give them some airtime. But don't be surprised if after learning all the techniques, you still find that there's an emotional pieces that make it hard for you to do this. I think sometimes when people can't do things just through the techniques, they feel like they're failures. And I think it's more important to understand what parts of you may be still hurting or need airtime or attention, that this triggers, it stirs up for you. On your handout, the questions I would be asking you at this point, so I want you to do them when we finish, is, what are some of the reasons you think you find it hard to let go of things? And what role might family history or past experiences or feelings play in that problem with clutter? And I have a whole checkoff list of things that may be part of what's getting in the way. And it might, you may see some that you resonate with. It may also think of some that aren't there that you're like, no, I think it's more this. So understand why it's so hard to do this. That's an important part of being able to do this. But you can kind of do both. You can say, I'm going to do 5 minutes every day of decluttering for 5 minutes every day. And if it stirs up feelings afterwards, I'll write about those feelings. So you can kind of do both simultaneously. But I find that sometimes if you're just ignoring the feelings, they're sneaking up on you and they're going to kind of sabotage you. So I guess it's partly because I'm a psychologist. I do look at the sort of underpinnings of problematic behavior. And believe me, for all of us, it's not that we don't rationally know the things we should do. It's really the deeper emotions that kind of get in the way. And you can kind of do a combined approach. Figure out what's kind of getting stirred up emotionally, but also use techniques that at least get you started. So how do you get started? Well, there's a couple of suggestions from different people. I'll review some of them. Start it in an area that has an immediate impact on your day-to-day life. So that might be the counter in your bathroom. Every time you go in to brush your teeth or use the toilet, you see your counter is just a cluttered mess. Start in an area that will have a dramatic impact and really will be inspiring for you to keep going. And stay with that area until you get it decluttered. Don't go off on tangents. That's one of the challenges about and critical to not getting overwhelmed is it's so easy to start with one thing and think, you know what, this really needs to be out by the books. Go out to the books and then think, I really should alphabetize all of my books. No, go put it where it needs to be and then come back to your original place that you've started working on. Leave it where it needs to go. Don't start decluttering in that area. Stick with where you start. So that you don't go off on tangents and then get overwhelmed. Stay with that area until it's decluttered and don't get off on tangents. It's important to see a kind of immediate improvement to kind of keep yourself motivated. Success breeds success. So even if you just clean out a drawer or something small, if it has an immediate impact and you feel good about it, it's going to keep you moving forward. Most organizers will say just start with something small, one counter, one shelf, one drawer, so that you get that sense of success, because that is motivating. So one of the biggest challenges is to really keep going and not get overwhelmed. It's essential. I know this sounds contradictory, but don't look at the whole picture. Don't be thinking about everything in your house that needs to be decluttered. Start with something, focus only on that one thing, something you can realistically tackle, so that you can have an initial experience of success right out of the gate. You know, it can also mean just committing to doing something for 5 minutes a day. You know, if trying to, I don't recommend trying to declutter your entire house in a weekend, unless you're the kind of person that works well under those circumstances, and everybody's wired differently. But since most of us get overwhelmed and it's hard to start because of that, start small. And those small steps will add up, and they'll get you started. And getting started is almost always the hardest part. So you can do a lot of things in short spurts if that's what works best for you. I'm going to go through a list of like quick things you can do, things that don't require a lot of time. Over time, I think to truly, tame the clutter beast, we'll eventually have to develop some new habits, such as putting things in the same place all the time. We have to create better organizing systems and stay on top of the problem by reducing the number of things we're bringing into our homes. But that will come in time, and it'll really follow from what you're just doing in small stages, because as you employ tactics for decluttering, those changes will become obvious and they'll become rewarding and they'll become routine. It'll be much easier to do them. But start with something that you can do. Just get started and trust that the rest will follow. I don't even want to emphasize all the stuff that may follow, because I think that will happen. And I think it's better to just trust that starting is really what's critical. Now, if you're somebody who likes a more systematic approach, I'm going to lay out a systematic approach, and that may work very well for you. But again, I'm also going to talk about little things you can do if you just want to do a little something every day or every other day. So if you really want to do something more systematic, let me give you some ideas about what professional organizers generally do. First, you want to just establish a time frame and stick to it. For example, promise yourself that you'll declutter for 5 minutes or 15 minutes or 30 minutes. Start with 5. Maybe the next day you want to do 15, but create a time frame that's going to work for you, and do it when it's best for you. Many people want to start something in the morning. That's my partner, Susan. She wants to get something done. She does it in the morning. Me, I'm barely able to open my eyes in the morning. I do my best work at 2 o'clock in the morning. So figure out what's your best time. And if you can't commit to doing this every day, commit to doing it every other day or 3 times a week. Just set aside a regular time to do some of this, and don't allow other distractions to take you off course, because believe me, when you have to do something you're not really crazy about doing, there's a million other things that suddenly feel really appealing. I remember I was working on my dissertation. I never wanted to clean my house more because it was so hard to sit down and keep writing. So set a time frame, stick with it, find something that's manageable for you. It might be once a week, it might be 3 times a week, it might be every day. You have to really decide what's manageable for you. You can also opt to do it for 2 hours over the weekend, if that works better for you. A commitment to doing something routinely is just really the key to getting it done. But start with what works for you. And again, before you start, you want to do a little bit of prep work. So this is the more systematic approach. So you want to get some boxes or storage containers, and you want to get trash bags, and then have something you can label those with. So, you might want to put stickers on a box that says giveaway. You might want to take a piece of masking tape and write on it sell. You want to get some markers so you can write directly onto the box or storage container, but you want to create a few cardboard boxes or storage containers into which you're going to put your major categories while you declutter an area, so that you're sorting things into those boxes rather than stopping to put them away, but just to really initially go through and put them in the different categories. The boxes might be things like giveaway, sell, recycle, relocate, and then a trash bag for trash. You can finalize your categories before you even start sorting things. So if you want to know what categories to use, you can ask yourself a few basic questions. Am I going to keep it? Am I going to let it go? If you're going to let it go, then the categories might be, is this something that gets thrown away? Is it something I can recycle? Is it something I can give away to, say, a charity or a thrift store? Or is it something I can sell if you decide you're going to do a yard sale? Yard sales are great ideas in terms of making some money off of your stuff, but a lot of people get stuck. They have a whole garage full of boxes of stuff for yard sales and they find it too hard to pull off the yard sale. So think about what's more important. Is it making a few, a few pennies on this thing that you'll sell in a yard sale? And if you like to do that, maybe you really would do it. But if it's just going to end up in your garage, take it to a thrift store. So those are basic categories. You have a box, probably trash can or trash bag for throwaway, recycle, give away, or sell. If you're going to keep it, then the categories are have an idea of which category it falls into and what you're doing with those categories. There is a list of categories and their potential locations that comes out of a book by Tolan, Frost, and Steckity called Buried in Treasures. And I'll just give you some examples. For example, if you have mail and miscellaneous papers, create a processing system for what you're doing with mail or filing system. If you have photos, make sure you have photo albums or photo books, boxes that you can put your photos in. Office supplies, where do they go? In your desk or on top of your desk. Hardware probably goes out into the garage, but have some idea of where you're putting different kinds of things so that everything does kind of have a place. Kitchen items, obviously you're going to put them in the kitchen drawers or the cabinets, but keep only what you really use. So in terms of stuff you're going to keep, have some sense of where you're going to put those items before you even get started. But again, first time you're going through, you just want to categorize everything as either keep, give away, resell, or trash, basically. And so you would sort for about 20 minutes. If you're going to do this for 30 minutes, sort for 20 minutes, and then spend the last 10 minutes putting away those things that you've put into different boxes. So if you have things that need to be relocated, relocate them. Books you find in your bedroom that you want to take out to a bookshelf, again, just put them next to the bookshelf. Unless you have an easy way to just stick them in the bookshelf. But don't go over to the bookshelf and decide I'm going to alphabetize all my books. You'll get to that when you get to the bookshelves. You're going to start one area at a time, or you'll go off on these tangents and not get a sense of satisfaction. So sort for 20 minutes and then put things where they should go for the last 10 minutes. Again, as I said, if there are areas you take things to where you want to, like I definitely want this to be in my living room, but I'm not sure where yet, just put it in that area and deal with it when you get to that area. Don't go off on tangents. Just put them where they belong and you'll get to them when you get to that section to clean. So that's a kind of systematic approach. And again, you could say I'm going to do this for 30 minutes, 20 minutes. You go into one room you decided you're going to work on and grab up immediately the things you think you would be willing to donate to a thrift store, things that you may want to recycle, like paper, and just sort them into those categories and then spend the last 10 minutes dealing with them. So if it's recycling, obviously you want to take everything out to your recycling bin, or if it's trash, you're going to put it in the trash. If it's stuff that you're going to donate, designate an area where you're putting the items to be donated so that you can take them to the thrift store after you've done this for a while and have enough to make that worth your while. So that's a kind of systematic approach. But if you're not somebody who likes the more systematic approach, or that feels too overwhelming as a place to start, there are other strategies that you can find helpful. And again, you're going to have all this information on your handout. There is a web page called Fly Lady, F-L-Y, Fly Lady. She has a whole program of baby steps that guides you through a series of small but important steps. So she has her own approach on what are good baby steps, and then how you can move up from there and how you can continue to move forward. So she does her suggestions are based on her own experience, and she knows how easy it is to get overwhelmed. And so she's really devised a kind of wonderful system to keep you moving forward. So the link to her webpage is on your handout. So again, if you don't have it, write to Sandra Satterfield or write to myself, and we'll make sure that you get the handout. And really, she developed these techniques using her own experiences. And if you feel too paralyzed to start anywhere, go on her webpage, which is basically www.flylady, and you'll find the rest. And there's 31 beginner baby steps that you can pull off of her webpage. That would be another way to get started. You can also do things like I've already suggested. Take 5 minutes every day to do something. Just do something for 5 minutes. Here are some different things you can do. And remember, 5 minutes is going to start chipping away at the problem. And if you did 5 minutes every day, every day, week after week after week, you really would begin to see a reduction in your clutter. And you may find, as many people do when they start with small steps, today I feel like doing 10 minutes. Don't create that expectation. If the next day you only want to do 5 minutes, do 5 minutes. But if one day you feel like doing 15 minutes, do 15 minutes. But listen to your heart so you don't get so overwhelmed. But again, if you're paralyzed, start with 5 minutes. Here's some things you can do in 5 minutes. Create a spot for all of your incoming papers. We all get so much mail, so much mail, and paper accounts for a very good amount of our clutter. So designate an inbox for all the paper that comes in the house, and you can sort it at the end of it. So when your mail comes in, or you come home from a doctor's visit and you've been given handouts or something, put all of that in one place. Put that in an inbox. It can be hanging on the wall. It can be a box, a nice box near the entrance to your door. Find a place where you're just going to put all paper that comes into the house. Then at the end of the day, or first thing in the morning, if you're a morning person, try to sort through that stuff and stick it in different categories then. So bills might be one category. I have a little graphic in your handout that says to be filed. That's like, so this is a stack of, what do you call them? Stacking trays. The very top is just the to be filed. The very top is just when it comes in. The categories underneath are what you might, at the end of your day or beginning of the next day, sort it into. So it might be stuff that you need to file. It might be coupons. It might be bills you have to pay, and then you should put like a date on when they have to be paid. And so you create categories so that you have a mail filing system for your mail. And just even starting to do that will be a big step in the right direction. So start with just putting it in one place and then taking 5 minutes at the end of your day or the beginning of your day to sort it into categories like bills, health related, action items. And then if you have action items, you might want to have like a category of things that have to be done within a week, things that have to be done within 2 weeks, and things you can do within the next month. But you're going to have to check those regularly, but at least you start filing them in some way that helps you then move through that stuff. You can create a filing system for, like I said, sort of stack trays, or you can, have a box with different categories and put them into the categories there. There's some pictures if you want to look at that. A lot of people, what they're doing now is they're scanning things rather than holding on to paper. So you can feed a document right through one of these scanners, and then you have an electronic version of it. Again, those of us of the older years are not as familiar with the scanning phenomenon, but there are things that are very reasonable. Like Walmart has a scanner that's about $179. Amazon has one for about $119. And what you're doing is you're taking a document that's on paper and you're creating an electronic version of it. And those take up a lot less room. So some ideas for like your filing system for your mail, bills, and if you're going to have a category for bills, put a date. I do this automatically, the date by which it has to be paid, and then I put them in chronological order. Some people have a category they just call a log folder. So these might be little business cards or information with people's phone numbers or contact information that you want to file away somewhere. You might add it to an address book if you're a little bit older and don't like the electronic stuff, or you might want to add it to your phone. So that might be a category, contact information you just want to, when you get a minute to put into your phone or put into your address book. A to-do category. So then in your to-do category, you want subfiles like by the end of the week, by the 15th of the month, by the end of the month. And then you know the time frame for the things that you need to act on. You might have a pending file. That's something that you did take action on, but you're waiting now to hear back from somebody. You can't go any further until you hear from somebody else. But you need to check those, say, every Monday. Check your pending file and see if there's somebody you need to follow up with. To be filed, those are articles or other things you want to keep, medical records, things like that. That's one of the other categories, but, also find a time to routinely file them, or things to read. So if there are things you see in a newspaper or magazine that you want to tear out and read, create a subcategory of things coming in from the mail or other sources that are to be read. So the idea is take your mail, put it all in one place when it first comes in, mail, paper of any kind. And then at the end of the day or beginning of the next day, put those into categories that will help you, not lose track of what you need to do with those things. Take things like junk mail and just put it in your recycling immediately. Every day, take your junk mail and put it in the recycling bin. I know one thing that infuriates most people is I think it's Bank of America is one of the most notorious, but they send you these checks that allow you to write yourself a loan, basically. And, you probably can't just throw those in the recycling bin because somebody can use them. So you have to tear them up or throw them through a shredder. I just blank out the name and information. And I don't know why they do that because nobody likes it. So learn to file quickly so you really can do it in 5 minutes at the end of your day or 5 minutes at the beginning of your day. And once you get to, used to your filing system and you create one that works for you, it's going to be much easier to do that. And force yourself to just make decisions. It's junk mail. It's another charity that wants your money, and you really don't. I do have one person that tells me she has an entire table full of charities that she would really like to donate to, but it's just completely overwhelming. And what I said is, if you want to pick one every month, then, at the end of every month, you got to go through that pack, pick that one, and then throw the rest away. So creating a system for your mail and your paper, that's one of the most important things you can do. But you can start by starting to work on creating this system for 5 minutes every day. You might not have the system all set up and ready to go at the end of your first day, but that's something you can do and work on that would really make a big difference. You can Again, it can be very simple. It can be a shelf, it can be a drawer, it can be a 3-foot area around your couch. But once you've cleaned it, commit to keeping it clutter-free. And every day you might want to sort of expand out your no clutter zones. That's one thing that people find is a way to get started. Clean off a surface, any surface. It can be a counter, a tabletop, a small table, any flat surface. Leave only the essentials. And if your counter has appliances that you really never use, really get yourself to think about whether you should store them or give them away or sell them. Because if you're not really using them, you're probably not going to suddenly start using them. So think about that. Another thing you could do in a 5-minute period is pick up 5 things and find places for them. Ideally, pick up things that you really do use and create a place that you're always going to put them inside. For example, your TV remote. You should have a place where you always put your TV remote. Pick up 5 things that you really want to keep. Otherwise, you can put them in the giveaway pile. But 5 things that you really want to keep and find a specific place that you will always have them. Because that's part of what reduces that needing to dig through tons and tons of stuff to find the thing you're looking for. You can create a maybe box. What I mean by that is if you really can't decide whether to keep something or not, put it in the maybe box. And at the end of a month or 6 months, go through your maybe box. And the reality is if you have not used that item, it probably is something you can give away or throw away. So if you're really hard to make decisions, put a whole bunch of stuff in your maybe box, wait a week, wait 2 weeks, wait a month, go through your maybe box. And if you haven't used them, consider the possibility that you really don't need them. Select items for donation. Consider the possibility that the item you have its time with you is over and it's time for it to be helpful to somebody else. And fill a box or a bag with things that you're unlikely to use. And remember, 80% of what we keep, we never really use. So you probably can err in the direction of giving a lot more things away than you do. Another technique that some people who find that they that people who buy too much stuff use, you can create a 30-day list. So clutter happens because we buy too much stuff. So what you can do is you can use a 30-day list. And what that means is if you see something you really, really want to buy, put it, unless it's essential, like your groceries, put it on the 30-day list. At the end of 30 days, if you still really want to purchase it, allow yourself to purchase it. But see if waiting 30 days makes a difference. Just one technique worth trying. Go to your closet, pull out all your clothes that you don't wear. If they are seasonal items, you really will wear them next winter, then put them in storage bags. And there are all these storage bags that you can compress and suck the air out of, and it really can reduce your pile of sweaters to that, and then you can stick it under your bed or stick it in your closet. There's something called the reverse hanger trick. What it means, the idea is to put all your clothes on hangers that are facing in one direction. So the hook is faced toward the back of your closet. When you wear something, you put it back on the hanger, but you turn the hanger around. So it shows that this is an item I actually wore. And consider then going through that closet again after a month or two and pull out the items that you haven't worn. So the ones that still have the hooks facing toward the back of the wall, that means you've never worn them in the last month or 2 months. That's how long you decide to go. And really ask yourself, am I really likely to use? Now, what I do is I see it and I think, oh, I really should wear that. We wear 20% of our clothes 80% of the time. If after a month or two, your clothes, the clothes that are facing, the hanger is facing toward the back of the wall, meaning you have not taken them off and used them, those are really things that you might want to consider letting go of. And again, think of how many people are out there who could probably use those clothes. Another quick thing you could do is clean out your medicine cabinet. Get rid of outdated medicines and old creams or tired looking objects. Medicine cabinets and closets in the bathroom often have a lot of stuff that's, you're not even going to want to use it anymore. The lotions doesn't even smell good anymore. So just do your medicine cabinet. That's, again, something you can do on a short term that gives you an immediate sense of satisfaction. A few other suggestions, and I know we're going to run out of time. If you really want to pace yourself, there is a book called 1 Year to an Organized Life. It's on your reading list. That's one way if you really just want to give yourself the time to do this in a framework that feels doable for you. Check out that book because it's about doing it over the course of a year. You can do something like give away one item every single day. Every day, pick one item, put it in your giveaway box. If you do this, you're going to remove 365 items from your house every year. And if you pick 2 things that you're ready to let go of, you would be giving away 730 things that you no longer need in your home. And that's pretty substantial. That's going to make a dent. But again, it can be as easy as 5 minutes every day. You pick 1 or 2 items that you're willing to let go of and give away. And again, you can do some of this with a partner where you both, each take 5 minutes. She runs in one direction, you run in the other direction, and pick 2 things that you're getting away. But you can't touch the other person's items because what I've discovered is everybody else's stuff seems like junk and all of your stuff feels precious. So you don't get to mess with other people's stuff. You only get to put in the giveaway box the things that are yours to give away. And again, move through your home quickly, even if you just do it for 5 minutes, and fill a trash bag or a box with giveaways. You just say, today I'm going to, go run through the house for 5 minutes and pick everything up that I think I really could give away or throw away. But do 5 minutes just on that category. You can make a list of areas in your home that you want to declutter. Start with the easiest and then check them off as you complete them. It's a way to kind of chunk down the task of decluttering your whole home in a way that feels manageable. And you can stop worrying about whether you're going to get to these other areas because they're on the list and you will get to them. But start with the easiest so you get a sense of satisfaction and keep systematically moving through your list. There's something called the 12-12-12 challenge. You pair up with a partner and you kind of make it a contest. You find 12 things to throw away, 12 things to donate, and 12 things to return to their proper place. Now, personally, I would start with the 6-6-6 challenge, which is 6 things you'll throw away, 6 things you're willing to donate, and 6 things that you can relocate to their proper place. And you can kind of make a contest and see who can do it the fastest. But it's a good way to really force yourself to make some very quick decisions. And 9 times out of 10, those quick decisions are the right decisions. You do intuitively kind of know. But again, it's called the 12-12-12 challenge, but I give you permission to make it the 6-6-6 challenge. Use your imagination. You can imagine things like what your home would look like if it was really the way you wanted it. You can imagine like what's the worst thing that could happen if you parted with something and really assess how bad that would be. How much would it cost to replace it? How much would it cost? How much are you paying to keep it, emotionally and otherwise? Another suggestion: start at the corner of a door. Start at the corner by a door in a room and go through the room one time, just cleaning off the superficial stuff, meaning emptying the basket in the room, cleaning off surfaces. And then go back a second time around the room and go a little deeper. So maybe clean out some of the drawers, clean out the pile of books, and then the third time around, go even deeper. And again, you might only get through the first time around, which is the more immediate kind of cleaning. And again, you might just do that for 5 minutes and it might take you a week to get it done. And it might be another week before you get deeper. But it's just a way to start. It's a way to start. All these are really just ways to get started. It's not like any one of them is better than any other. They just really, appeal differently to different people. At the end of this handout, like I said, one of the questions I'm going to ask you is, what's in which of these suggestions? And go back and look them over. See which ones appeal to you and which ones you could start with. Another thing is pull everything out of a drawer. Just take the drawer, empty it on a table. Sort the drawer into 3 piles: stuff that really should go in that drawer, stuff that belongs somewhere else, and stuff I can get rid of. Clean that drawer out really nicely, put back the stuff that really needs to be there, but then get rid of the other 2 piles. So things that you can get rid of, again, put them in your giveaway box or your throwaway box. And if there's stuff that needs to be relocated, relocate it where it belongs. And again, if you don't have time to do that right away, just put it in that area. You will get to it when you get to it. But that can be one way that's very satisfying. Clean out one drawer. Declutter one room, closets, desk, cabinets, before going on to the next. Spending time in that room is going to, and this is a quote from one of the organizers, spending time in that room that you really have decluttered well, it's going to feel so good that it's easier to keep that room clean, and it's also inspiring to do more. So again, sometimes what you're going for is to make it manageable, but also to give yourself a sense of success and some space in your house that feels comfortable. Take photos, before and after photos, if you decide to clean an area, even if it's just your kitchen counter or your bathroom counter. Take a picture before, clean it up. Take a picture after, just so you get that sense of satisfaction and the recognition that you really can do this, and then it feels good. And you'll begin to see how your home could look, and that becomes more motivating for getting started. There are 10 rules from Courtney Carver, 10 rules to help you live with less stuff, and I'm going to read those to you. First of all, ask yourself why. She says asking why is more important than how. What she means by that is asking yourself, why do I want to live with less? Like, what's my motivation for decluttering? Like, why would I do that? What's the payoff for me? Why do I want there to be more space for myself in my home and in my life? I also think you need to ask the question why, in terms of why is it so hard to do this, so that you're not getting tripped up by emotions that you haven't recognized. Second rule for her is do one thing at a time. This is a step-by-step. She writes step-by-step, inch by inch, scarf by book by measuring cup process. So one thing at a time. It's not a race. That's her third rule. Slow and steady will get the job done. 4, if everything matters, then nothing matters. And she writes, in some stage of decluttering, you may feel like all this stuff is important, that it all has meaning, and that each thing matters. Remind yourself that if everything matters, nothing matters. If you can't have if it can't all have your love and attention. When you let go of what doesn't matter to you, you give yourself more of yourself to what does matter. So if everything starts to feel like it's mattering, you need to step back and say to yourself, how can it all matter? Or is there a way to keep some part of this that's associated with a particular meaning and get rid of some of the other things? But as she says, if everything matters, then kind of nothing matters. And it's the truth with clutter. I mean, you can't even see the things that matter to you anymore because they're so buried under all the other stuff. Keep your eye on your own stuff. She means that even if someone else in your house needs to declutter, start with yourself. It's not your job to declutter their stuff. Rule 6, small progress is still progress. Celebrate the baby steps and the small wins, because this will keep you going. This isn't just my attitude. This is how people who write about decluttering say, start small so you can get started. Less is not nothing. What she's saying is you don't have to give up everything. You don't give up all your things. But you have to figure out what truly adds value to your life and what truly brings you enjoyment, and keep those things in your house. I'm not necessarily a big fan of Marie Kondo. Her question is, does this thing give me joy? I saw a great quote that said, I decided to rid my home of things that did not bring me joy. And so far, I've rid my home of all vegetables and the electric bill. That's pretty funny. I think it helps to ask yourself, does this thing bring me good feelings, or is it helpful, or is it something I really use? Those are good questions to ask. And less is not nothing. It doesn't mean you have to give everything up. Just in case, we hold on to things just in case means never. She says all the things you keep just in case will rarely be used, and you might not be able to find them when you do need them. Ask yourself how much it would cost to replace it or borrow it, and what it costs you to keep it. So those things we hold on to just in case, hardly ever do we use those things, because half the time we can't even find them because they're buried under so many other things. And again, the cost of keeping them and living with so much stuff in our house is not worth I don't know, $2 you might be able to get it for in a thrift store if you really decide you need it. Holding on, she says, is actually harder than letting go. She writes, letting go may feel hard, but holding on is harder. You have to hold on every single day. You hold on by paying for items with your money, your time, your attention, and your emotion. You only have to let go of it once. So if you keep things in your house that you probably really don't need, you're paying a price every day as a result of all that clutter. And even though it may initially feel hard to let go of something, when it's done, and you don't continue to pay that price. I had a client who said she would ask herself, do I want to be responsible for this item? You know, for the next 10 years. So even though letting go may feel hard, it's short-lived, and letting go is painful initially, but really pays off the long haul. Finally, her last rule is, this is love. And she writes, when you begin to declutter and live with less for reasons that matter to you, you understand that this isn't about organized sock drawers or clean countertops. Simplicity is the way back to love. It's the way back to people that you love, work that you love, and a life that you love. I've given you a lot of resources and books on your handout. Your homework is to think about what gets in the way of your decluttering, what kind of time frame is realistic for you, set some kind of goal for yourself that's achievable. What's a good place to start? It's a good question, and think about what decluttering will mean for you and why it's important in your life. I'll end with a few quotes. Having a simply uncluttered home is a form of self-care. I read this before, but I really like it. My clearing has allowed me to rediscover things I had stopped seeing and put them in a place of prominence. The best way to discover what you really need is to get rid of what you really don't. And finally, clutter is chaos. It's a suffocating presence that robs us of peace and joy. So lots of suggestions. Start with things that work for you. If you don't have the handout, write to me or to my boss, Sandra Satterfield, because we'd like to make sure you have the materials so you can really implement this in your life. Terrence, I don't know if we have time for any questions or if anybody's put any questions in the chat box.
Sure, we've got two questions and just a comment. So, okay. First question is from Tom. What does it say about a person if you can readily give something away, but you just can't bear the thought of throwing it away?
Probably that waste is a value, and so if you give it away, at least you feel like it went to a good home and someone else might benefit from it. But the idea of throwing it away somehow feels like it's wasteful because you didn't find you didn't find a helpful way to use it. So I think you might have grown up in a family where you were taught it was really bad to throw something away because it was wasteful. So somehow the idea of passing it on to somebody else means that it still has value. And I have somebody who's done a lot of decluttering, partly by identifying people who would be willing to take some of their things, not all of their things, but you know, if they can go to a good home, that's fine. But keep in mind that a lot of other people are also dealing with their own clutter, so they don't always need something. But I think it probably has to do with waste, because if you're giving it to somebody who can use it, then it doesn't feel like it's wasteful. It feels like it's going to a good purpose. But if the idea of throwing it away feels bad, then that's probably because you think it's wasteful. But you know, people have more than enough stuff.
Right. Maybe we should offshore some of our waste, you know?
Yeah.
So we have a question from Anonymous. Tens of thousands of photos on the computer. How do I get my spouse to delete? And maybe that's a whole other topic, huh?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Are you talking about technically how do you do that, or?
Yeah, so the photos on their computer or on their phones, things like that.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen things you can buy. They're really just little, what do you call it? Little scan discs, little things you plug in. You can plug it into your phone, plug it into your computer, and you can download all the photos into that one little drive. Again, that's not cluttering up your computer as much, and you probably can store a heck of a lot on those little thumb drives. So that might be one way. Okay.
And then we have a comment from Susie. You just answered my question, Dr. Judy. It seems I've started and tossed my room. I guess they've already tossed their room.
Good.
And I've now gone on different tangents. Thank you for all this information.
Oh, good. I'm so glad it's helpful. Believe me, many of us are struggling with this, you know, and so you're in good company. But small things are a step in the right direction. And again, you should be seeing on your screen the email address for myself and my boss, Sandra. Sandra will be glad to send you the handout. She has it as well. And I look forward to seeing you next month. And like I said, it's either going to be about wonder or chronic pain or getting out of languishing and back into thriving in your life post-pandemic, or at least with much less restriction. And if you haven't gotten your vaccine, go get it, because I want you there. And the side effects of COVID are far worse than the side effects of any vaccine, in my opinion. So I love you. I care about you. Go take care of yourself. And feel free to reach out to me if you have any other questions that you run into as you're starting to try making these changes. All right, everybody. Thank you very much. See you next month.